Thank you for tuning into another video from JRM Recaps. Spoilers ahead. We open up in the distant future, in the city of Los Angeles. It's June 21st, 2028, and the city has broken out into deadly riots, making its way to downtown LA. A group of 4 thieves take advantage of the chaos and decide to rob a bank. The group is led by a man named Waikiki, his brother, Honolulu, and 2 other associates that they picked up for the job, but do not know very well. During the robbery, the men are forced to flee before they can open the vault. Rather than leave empty-handed, they change their plans and steal the possessions of the bank patrons instead. Honolulu passes a well-dressed gentleman and decides to steal what appears to be an ordinary pen from the teller. The teller warns him not to do it, but Honolulu dismisses him and moves on. After blowing a hole through the wall to escape, they are found by 4 armed officers who exchange fire with the group. One of them is killed, and the other, Byuk, takes a bullet to the neck. Honolulu is then shot multiple times before his brother, Waikiki, is able to come to his aid and dispose of the remaining officers. When asked by Byuk what the plan is, Waikiki grabs his brother and heads to get help. The 3 remaining thieves head to Hotel Artemis, a secret hospital for criminals and assassins, which is run by Nurse Jean Thomas. She receives a phone call in advance alerting her of the thieves' arrival, so she begins making preparations. Once they arrive, Waikiki and his brother scan their wrists through a device that detects their membership chip implant. However, Byuk is denied because he does not have a membership. After making a scene and attacking Waikiki, Nurse Jean unleashes her large assistant, Everest, to take out Byuk and throw him outside. Byuk tries to defend himself, but Everest overpowers him with ease. Nurse Jean proceeds to tend to Waikiki and Honolulu, which we learn are not their real names, but code names given to them during their stay. She takes them to the back where Honolulu is placed on a chair so she can check his body and assess his injuries. The machine narrows down the location of the bullets and reveals a failing liver. Nurse Jean then begins printing a replacement liver for Honolulu, which will take some time to complete. During all this, Waikiki notices the pen in his brother's pocket and questions him about it, but before he can answer, he passes out from the pain. While Everest is seen taking Byuk outside, he gets a call from Nurse Jean letting him know that the cops turned off the power grid, and that he'll need to repair the generator. When Everest asks if she can do it herself, we learn that she has anxiety about going outside, and for some unknown reason, cannot leave the hotel. Byuk then surprises Everest by jumping on his back and trying to strangle him, but to no avail as Everest quickly frees himself and throws Byuk to the ground. Byuk tries pleading with him, but Everest gives him one last warning and heads back inside. Next we see Nurse Jean tending to another of one of her patients, an arms dealer named Acapulco. He appears to have deep cuts and lacerations on his face, which the nurse is tending to. During their conversation we learn that the rioting is due to the fact that water has been privatized, and most people do not have access to clean water anymore. To this, Acapulco retorts that they need to get a real job and pay for it like everyone else. The nurse is visibly annoyed by this remark and tries to leave as quickly as possible. While making her way out of the room, she is stopped by a beautiful woman named Nice. Once the nurse is done tending to her injuries, Nice makes her way to her room in order to set up a secure line with her client and provide an update. We learn that she is an assassin as she informs them she purposely injured herself in order to gain access to the hotel and get close to her target. Acapulco and Nice eventually meet in the common area, where they exchange insults with one another. Before the two can escalate the situation any further, they are disrupted by Waikiki, who is only trying to keep the peace and make coffee. We learn that Waikiki and Nice know each other as they exchange greetings, and both find Acapulco amusing and begin to laugh at his empty threats. Acapulco becomes increasingly more agitated, so Waikiki decides to stop antagonizing him and leave with his coffee. As Nice makes her way out the room, Acapulco decides to insult her, to which she responds by breaking a nearby coffee mug and hurls a large shard at him as a warning, narrowly missing him on purpose. Nurse Jean then receives a call from a man named Crosby Franklin. Crosby's father is the owner of the hotel, and he lets her know that her father needs immediate medical assistance and will be there soon. He instructs her to make sure his father is their #1 priority. Nurse Jean relays this information to Everest, who is busy working on the generator on the roof. He discloses his worries regarding the riot approaching the hotel, but Nurse Jean reassures them they will be okay due to the fortification of the building. As the riots are growing more intense and violent, Jean sees a cop named Morgan pleading for help in one of the outside cameras. The cop is begging for help, but keeps addressing Nurse Jean as Mrs. Thomas. Everest refuses to allow an officer into the building since it is against the rules, but Jean has the notion that she may know the officer. Jean grabs a photo of a young boy so she can bring it outside to show to Morgan. Once in the street, Nurse Jean shows the photo to Morgan, who is barely conscious, but is able to identify the child as Beau. Out of nowhere, a group of thugs appear and try to steal Jean's bag. Before they can take anything, the thugs are taken down by heavily armed police officers. The officers try to go after Jean until Everest shows up to protect her and disposes of the officers. He is then forced to grab Morgan against his best judgment, and they go inside. Once they are safe within the hotel, Nurse Jean tends to Morgan's wounds. We learn that Beau was Nurse Jean's child who died from an overdose many years ago. Nurse Jean is open about losing her son, but she never mentioned his name to anyone, so it was nice to hear someone say his name again. After she gets better, Morgan is escorted out of the hotel. Later, Waikiki and Nice find each other in a nearby room and begin chatting and sharing a drink. Nice notices the pen that Honolulu had stolen and reveals to him that the pen they stole is actually a portable vault containing yellow diamonds. She confirms that the market value could fetch about $18 million. Unfortunately, they belong to a notorious criminal known as the Wolf King, who happens to be the owner of the hotel. Waikiki takes the pen to his brother and shows him what's inside. He then explains how they are both in danger and tries to get the both of them to leave, but Honolulu is still on life support. He lets Waikiki know he has to stay, and that he should leave without him. Waikiki disagrees and instead chooses to print a gun using the 3D printer, although it is against hotel rules. The Wolf King and his goons arrive with Crosby to the Hotel Artemis. Due to limitations in the hotel, Nurse Jean only allows the Wolf King to enter, and he is forced to leave everyone behind, which does not sit well with Crosby. Nurse Jean then begins treating the Wolf King's injuries. Before doing so, Jean administers a drug whose side effects is telling the truth. The Wolf King begins rambling about nonsense when he suddenly mentions Jean's son, Beau. This catches her off guard because the Wolf King knew she had a son, but she never mentioned his name to anyone. After interrogating him, the Wolf King reveals that he had Beau killed for stealing one of his cars and made it look like an overdose. Knowing that Wolf King is in the hotel, and since he is the target for her employer, Nice kills the power at the hotel by destroying the rooftop generator with a bomb. Acapulco is on the rooftop next to the generator attempting to catch a helicopter out of the city when the bomb goes off. This ends up scaring the chopper and leaving Acapulco stranded. This also causes Honolulu's life support to shut down. While Jean is contemplating whether to kill the Wolf King, the power goes out and she gets an alert that Honolulu is flatlining. She rushes to his aid, with a frantic Waikiki at her side, but unfortunately she cannot save him, and he ends up passing away. Nice makes her way into the Wolf King's room while the power is out, and finishes her job by ending his life. She is able to record the death for her employer via a recording device implanted in her eye. Minutes later, she runs into Waikiki, who knows what she did, and points a gun at her. He threatens to shoot her, but realizes he cannot go through with it since he still harbors feelings for her. Out of nowhere, Acapulco sneaks up behind Waikiki and shoots him. He then goes for Nice and shoots her in the leg. He intends to finish her off once and for all, but the injured Waikiki intervenes and fights him off. They brawl for a few minutes until Waikiki ends up sticking Acapulco's head in the 3D printer, which ends up killing him. Meanwhile, when the power went out, Crosby started to get frantic and worry about the safety of his father. As his paranoia set in, he instructed his team of goons to try to break into the establishment any way possible and kill everyone inside. They try to blast the front gate open with explosives, but can only damage it slightly. Additionally, some of the men begin tearing down the walls in an attempt to get in. We turn back to Waikiki and Nice, who are embracing when Nurse Jean walks in. She is disappointed to find Acapulco dead, but realizes that Waikiki suffered a serious injury. They meet Everest in the hallway and decide they all need to get out of the hotel before the Wolf King's men get in and kill them all. As they make their way to the hidden emergency exit, Everest stops and lets them know they won't make it far with the goons on their tail, and someone has to stay behind to hold them off and keep the hotel running. Reluctant at first, Nurse Jean gives in and says her final goodbye to her longtime friend. As they make their way through the hallway, we can see the goons start breaking through the walls. Once at the elevator, Nice decides to stay behind and help fight. When Nurse Jean tries to convince her to come with them, Nice states, "You fix people and I break them." In life we can't always choose what we're good at, and then proceeds to run down the hallway. Finally, the Wolf King's men end up breaking through the walls and the front gate. Nice fends off the men in the hallway, while Everest takes on the men in the front lobby. Waikiki and Jean attempt to escape the hotel through an abandoned part of the building, but are confronted by Crosby, who has discovered that his father was killed. Waikiki tries to barter for their lives by showing him the pen carrying the diamonds, but Crosby will only make the exchange for Waikiki's life. He will not let Jean live as he blames her for the death of his father. Waikiki decides to fight Crosby in his injured state in order to help his friend, but finds himself in a compromising position with Crosby trying to thrust his knife into Waikiki's chest. Jean ends up injecting elephant tranquilizer, which she had been nonchalantly carrying in her bag, and it ends up killing Crosby. Waikiki and Jean make their way outside and into the street as the riots start to break through the barricades. They make their way to Waikiki's car when Jean decides she has to stay to help. The only thing she knows how to do, and is good at, is helping people who are hurt. She tells Waikiki about a similar hotel in Las Vegas called the Apache, and instructs him to go there to treat his injuries. The two part on good terms, and Jean makes her way back to the street. We then see the sign for the Hotel Artemis light up again, and can infer that Everest survived. This puts a smile on Jean's face as she disappears into the street in search of people in need. We then cut to a scene where we see a shadowy figure, taking the form of a woman, walking across the screen in a dark hallway within the hotel. This implies that Nice has also survived her encounter with the Wolf King's men. Thank you for watching our recap. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for future videos. Also, try some of our other videos displayed on screen.